Epictetus was born into a world where freedom, for most people, was nothing more than a word, a distant dream. As a slave in the Roman Empire, he had no choice over his daily life, no say over his fate. His identity was dictated by others, his value assessed by how useful he could be to his owner. He belonged to Epictetus, a freed man and important secretary to the Emperor Nero, and a man known for his brutality. The young Epictetus suffered under Epictetus' harsh treatment. According to some accounts, Epictetus even broke his leg, leaving Epictetus with a limp for the rest of his life. And yet, even in the midst of physical suffering, he discovered something profound. He later recalled, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." In those words, Epictetus planted a seed that will one day grow into a powerful philosophy, a way of seeing the world that could turn even the bleakest circumstances into an opportunity for growth. He started to realize that while he couldn't control Epictetus or the conditions of his life, he could control his own reactions, his own mind. As he grew older, Epictetus' thirst for understanding only deepened. In ancient Rome, philosophers were as revered as generals. Their wisdom was seen as a kind of inner armor against the unpredictable tides of life. Through overhearing others at Nero's court, or perhaps in a rare moment of respite, Epictetus was introduced to Stoicism, a philosophy that would come to shape him more deeply than he ever could have imagined. He would later write, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Stoicism offered a roadmap, a way of transforming suffering into strength, a guide to achieving freedom from within. Epictetus knew he wanted to devote himself to this path, to seek out teachers and learn everything he could. Yet, in a life bound by servitude, even the pursuit of knowledge was a forbidden act. Epictetus' chains were not just physical but psychological. How could a man in bondage seek wisdom? How could he find meaning or control in a life where he owned nothing, not even his own body? It was easy to question whether his pursuit of philosophy was futile. After all, he was a slave, and the path to intellectual freedom was reserved for citizens, for the privileged. Although the circumstances of Epictetus' education are unknown, Epictetus, with his master's permission, found a mentor in Musonius Rufus, one of the most respected Stoic philosophers in Rome. Musonius was known not only for his wisdom, but for his willingness to teach anyone, even those at society's margins. Under Musonius' guidance, Epictetus began to study the core tenets of Stoicism. Musonius taught him about the dichotomy of control, the idea that while many things in life are beyond our power, our thoughts, beliefs, and responses are entirely ours. Epictetus would later echo this teaching, writing, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." In Musonius' presence, Epictetus felt a new sense of possibility. The world outside could remain hostile, but in the fortress of his mind, he could begin to cultivate peace, strength, and yes, even freedom. With Musonius' teachings as his guide, Epictetus crossed a threshold in his life. He began to see that his hardships, rather than being obstacles, could be the very forge that strengthened his character. His journey toward true freedom had begun, and with every lesson, he grew less dependent on the world's approval or validation. Instead, he started to draw strength from within. He would later summarize this turning point with the words, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Epictetus had begun the process of mastering himself, of seeing his thoughts as tools, his will as a weapon, and his mind as a sanctuary that no one could touch. But his journey was far from over. There still were tests, trials, and temptations that would challenge his newfound beliefs, that would force him to reckon with just how deeply his philosophy could carry him. As Epictetus embraced Stoicism, he found himself drawn into a new way of life that required constant vigilance over his thoughts and reactions. Yet, while the mind was his sanctuary, the physical world around him remained harsh, tough, and often hostile. His days as a slave were still filled with exhausting labor and oppressive conditions, and he encountered relentless tests to his newfound philosophy. Every time Epictetus mocked him, every time he suffered physical pain or humiliation, Stoicism demanded that he responded not with bitterness or anger, but with acceptance and calm resilience. One day, Epictetus tested his limits. Legend has it that Epictetus twisted Epictetus' leg as a punishment, watching to see if he would break, not only in body, but in spirit. As Epictetus twisted, Epictetus said calmly, "You will break my leg." And when his leg finally snapped, he merely responded, "Did I not tell you so?" This response was more than stoic endurance. It was the embodiment of his teachings. Epictetus had reached a point where he could observe his suffering as something separate from his true self. He was showing, in the starkest terms possible, that the body could be broken, but his will, his inner freedom, was invulnerable. He later reflected on this moment and his philosophy. Suffering arises from trying to control what is uncontrollable, or from neglecting what is within our power. In these words, Epictetus teaches us that pain and suffering are not inherently bad. They are simply part of life's landscape. What matters is how we meet them. For him, the broken leg became a symbol of his unbreakable spirit, a reminder that no one could reach his mind without his consent. Eventually, Epictetus' life took a significant turn. Sometime around 68 AD, Epictetus freed him. Epictetus was finally a free man, no longer bound to anyone's control but his own. But freedom, as he now understood it, came with its own tests. It would have been tempting to see his newfound liberty as the answer to all his problems, as the ultimate form of release from suffering. But Epictetus knew better. He understood that while he was no longer a slave in the physical sense, true freedom was an internal state that had to be cultivated daily. He would later teach, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." With these words, he emphasized that physical freedom, while precious, was not the ultimate form of liberty. Now, Epictetus had to master himself without the constraints of servitude to remind him of what he'd learned. He had to test his philosophy, not against the lash of his master, but against the subtler, often more dangerous temptations of everyday life. In time, Epictetus' wisdom spread, and he became the renowned teacher in his own right. People from all over the Roman Empire came to study under him in Nicopolis, where he established the school of Stoicism. His teachings attracted wealthy patrons, high-ranking officials, and young students eager to learn the secrets of inner peace and resilience. But with fame came new challenges. Epictetus was now respected, even revered, and it would have been easy to become prideful, to let his ego distort his teachings. In his lectures, he constantly warned his students, and himself, against the traps of vanity and fame, saying, "If you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid in extraneous matters. Don't wish to seem knowledgeable. And if some regard you as important, distrust yourself." He knew that the true Stoic path required humility, a focus on the essentials of life, and a resistance to the ego's demands for praise and recognition. Fame, he taught, was another form of slavery if one became too attached to it, another external circumstance that could erode one's inner freedom. True mastery, he argued, lay in the discipline of thought, in the clarity of seeing what mattered most. Through years of practice and teaching, Epictetus refined his philosophy, sharing insights that would inspire generations. He emphasized that freedom was found not in riches, power, or fame, but in simplicity, in letting go of desires for things beyond our control. He advised his students, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. This wisdom was his reward, not wealth, but the ability to live in harmony with himself and with the world. Epictetus' teachings did not promise an easy life, but they offered a path to peace, regardless of one's circumstances. He believed that true wealth came from the soul's resilience, from the ability to meet life's hardships with composure and grace. To his students, he imparted these principles with unwavering conviction, reminding them that each of us holds the keys to our own freedom. In the depths of hardships or in the height of success, what matters is our commitment to living by our values and mastering our responses. He often told his students, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. For Epictetus, the journey was never about acclaim or success. It was about spreading a message of resilience and freedom. His legacy lives on because he believed so profoundly in the power of this inner transformation. He left his students with the challenge: don't explain your philosophy, embody it. So ask yourself, what can you control? And what today can you let go? If you have an interest in ancient philosophy, check out this video on why Socrates hated democracy.